Hi guys. It's quite a long video this, sorry about that. It's just the process of building it and painting it. It's just kind of filled a lot of footage. But there's a bit of a change for me because it was a slightly more expensive model, but with the photo etch and a few nice features, a bit more detail than, like, say, the Zvezda type models that I've been doing. So it's the T34. I think it's like a late war T34 with the 85mm gun. So it came, first of all, just showing there that it came with 4 spare road wheels. But from my research, the Russian tanks, the T34s, they didn't carry spare road wheels, so I just put them in the box. Came with some spare diesel tanks, some small diesel tanks, and one spare big one that didn't have brackets or photo etch straps. So you've got just a couple of, unusable diesel tanks there, really. I don't know if that was like if there's a crew set where somebody's removing diesel tanks or filling diesel tanks, I don't know, but there's a few bits that, when the model's made, there's a few bits that you don't use, and they just went in the box. That was quite nice to have, I suppose. So the usual stage where I've painted the wheels first, because the tracks were the piece by piece plastic tracks rather than the vinyl stretchy ones. I've only done these by Zvezda in the past, so I was interested to see if they were easier to put together, and they were easier, but still problematic for me. If you've seen my previous videos, you know I prefer the stretchy vinyl ones, probably the only one on the planet who does. But because I brush paint, and because the tracks and the wheels are a different colour, and I don't even know how you'd spray paint that, how you'd mask it, I don't even know, but so I pre-paint the tracks and I pre-paint the wheels, and then that means that the usual poly cement that I use doesn't adhere. So I tried to use poly cement because it's a little bit flexible, and the tracks came a little bit loose again. They did fit together better than I'm used to, but then I ended up using some super glue, and I think once you start down that road, it's messy. You've got to have rubber gloves on, so you've not got good dexterity. I'm trying to use rubber gloves anyway with super glue recently, because it's just not good for your skin. But yeah, I've got past the tracks. They're tidy enough, and I put some mud effects on them in a bit. So yeah, I still prefer the vinyl stretchy ones. But no, it was a nice build. The turret went together really easy. Not a lot of filler needed, just where the engine deck meets the 45-degree angle that goes down the back of the tank. There was a tiny gap there, and I just filled it from the inside, just so that light wouldn't shine through. Everything else went together perfectly on it. The photo etch straps on the diesel cans looked nice. The handles look nice. I put the grill on the underside. I've done a couple of T34s, and the photo etch grill always goes on the inside of the engine vent, and as far as I could see, the instructions said put it on the outside. So I put it on the inside just because that's what I've done before. And from photographs of T34s, I thought that looked right. But yeah, if you've seen my previous video, guys, it's going on like a snowy road. But my intention wasn't to make it snowy. It had, for whatever reason, I'd spent the night hiding in a barn or whatever. I didn't want it white camouflage, and I didn't want snow on it, really. It's an inner city kind of diorama that I'd created with a building, a scratch built building, and I was just wanting to do a camouflage T34, play with some of the ideas, the camouflage that the crew applied for themselves. The Russian military sent out pastes, a sand brown and a chocolate brown paste that could be diluted with oil and applied when camouflage was needed, maybe in autumn, maybe to just break the green up a little bit, maybe in woodland. And the crew applied it, so even though there's lots of schemes on Google, so-called schemes, Russian armour camouflage with the same sand and chocolate brown on top of green. You know, it's just use your imagination because the crews did it themselves, sometimes with mops and brooms. So I did notice that they weren't geometric camouflage patterns. The stuff I saw on pictures, they were very organic and curved camouflage patterns. So yeah, clear picture in my mind for this model that I wanted to do some brown camouflage over the factory green and then distress it a little bit with the hairspray chipping technique. And it's just simple as that, really. That's the plan I had for this one. You know, maybe a dusting of snow on the tracks, or a dusting of snow where it had knocked a tree or a bush, but the snow had fallen before the tank arrived. So please subscribe if you've not subscribed so far, guys. If you feel like you get something from these videos, and click like if you enjoy this one. I've started with a base of Vallejo flat green and Vallejo camouflage olive green. I think it was maybe 1 part olive green to 2 parts flat green to get this colour. Again, I'm not really sacred about this colour. The variations in the Russian green that the tanks were painted, different shades, and then it faded with the sun, and there's a bit of flexibility with it, and I like this. I like the way this one's come out. So then I'm lightening it with buff, Vallejo buff, like a beige, like a dust colour, and I'm just adding that into the same mix of green and just dry brushing it in places. I spent quite a bit of time preparing the green, just working on the green a little bit before I did the camouflage over the top of it, because I knew that I'd distress it quite a lot back to the green, so the green was going to be the predominant colour. And very limited decals with Ryefield T34. There was enough for about 4 or 5 different versions, different tanks, but essentially they all just came with a number on the side. There's no registration plates or red stars or anything like that. So then once the green was done, just to sort of give it some permanence, I give it a coat of Pledge Futures clear coat. I I left it to dry, and then I give it 2 coats of cheap hairspray and left that to dry for 24 hours. The thing with brush painting, when you're doing the hairspray chipping, you just have to be careful that you don't work too much into the surface and disturb what you've accomplished. So that's why I use the clear coat to fix the green, so that, you know, I don't start bleeding green into what I'm doing. And then I try and work, whereas I'm a person who uses diluted mixes of paint to get a real flat surface, so I don't see brush marks in it. Obviously, when it comes to working over the hairspray level, over the hairspray layer, you have to use your paint a little bit thicker, because you don't want to be working over it, and wetting it and kind of losing the effect of it. So a lot less dilution happening here. I've got the paint almost as it is out of the tub. I'm just testing it on the underside and on the tracks a little bit. So this is a slight combination of some Vallejo buff, maybe 1 part, and 1 part khaki grey. And I'm just trying to get some excess off my thick brush, so I'm using it as like a bit of a dust layer on the tracks and on the wheels. But this is my first layer of camouflage, this colour. You can see there's been a bit of modulation on the green, a bit of, you know, lighter and darker on when it comes to the green. I'll do some oil wash as well after I've done the camouflage, after I've distressed the camouflage. So, but yeah, I've built up some lighter tones on areas of wear and areas that be bleached in the sun a little bit. I didn't do any lighter tones on the browns because I just want the suggestion really of camouflage that's been on the tank in the past and has been rubbed off just through it not being a good mix, it not being a permanent paint job. I don't know if you can see, guys, but I'm using the brush to get a curved edge to that camouflage. So rather than hold the brush with the point touching the tank, which would mean I had to have a very steady hand. So instead, I'm putting the brush on the surface, the whole soft bristle end of the brush down onto the surface, and then I'm twisting the wood handle of the brush so that the natural curve of the bristles kind of creates a circular motion, like twisting a mop in the wringer to dry it out in a mop bucket. So I'm kind of using the shape of the brush to give a circular line or a circular finish to the camouflage. Maybe it's just me that I don't have very steady hands, but I think to do it with the tip, it wouldn't be a very smooth, soft line. It would be a little bit shaky, and I have to go over it and go over it and go over it. So as you're watching, guys, you might see me doing it. I'm kind of twisting the brush back and forth to create the curves and the edges to the camouflage. That's just the way I do it. I'm certainly no expert at painting them. I prefer to brush paint them, and that's just the way that I think I feel better doing a camouflage over a dark colour like that. And you can have a much more of a firm hold over the brush if you're pushing down on the whole bristle of the brush rather than trying to hold the tip still on against the surface. So I think I've jumped ahead here a little bit to the distressing of the hairspray. I did 2 coats of the sandy colour over the green, and then the dark brown was a bit more robust, so I only did 1 coat with the dark brown. And you can see there, rather than I usually use the old head off an electric toothbrush to give a good scouring to the surface when I'm doing hairspray distressing. But I wanted it to have a bit more control over it this time, so I'm just using a wet paintbrush. The same brush actually which I used for the camouflage. So yeah, knowing the way that these paint schemes were applied, I'm kind of being quite tough distressing this one. Quite rough with it. And the only thing is that it came off, and because, as I say, when you're brush painting, you have to use the paint a little bit thicker when you're doing this kind of camouflage. Certainly sand over green, you're going to have to use that a little bit thicker so that you don't see through it, and you don't want to activate the hairspray prematurely with too wet a paint. So as I was distressing it, there were pieces of painted surface were coming off, little flakes of paint were coming off. So you just have to be mindful of that. Rinse it off, or just pick them off with a cotton bud, a Q-tip. But yeah, it came off quite easy. Actually, the paint came off quite easy. and then cotton bud or just a wet brush to roll some of the diluted paint off so that you get a clean finish. In reality, I should have done the same camouflage scheme, not on the wheels, but behind the wheels, on the body of the tank. The pictures that I saw, even though to me, a tank crew just upgrading its camouflage to suit the landscape, they wouldn't go behind the wheels, in my mind. But the photos and images that I saw online, the camouflage continued behind the wheels, but the wheels were plain. But it's up to you guys, you know, are you going to see that T34? There's not a lot of the lower body visible between the wheels anyway. I toyed with buying some tank riders for this model. There's some great kits out there. ICM, I think Tamiya, which I've spoke about in the past. I've done a few Zvezda Russian tanks with Tamiya Soviet assault troops. That's a great pack. I think 10 soldiers in a pack for about £7. In the UK, $10. So I went back to the sites, had a little look round. There was some great kits really for Russian tank riders and seated Russian soldiers and Russian soldiers at rest. I think I might do it in the future, guys, but so far it's just the tank on the diorama. There's definitely space for lots of different additions to that story. But if you've not seen the blown up building that I did and the rubble in the snow, yeah, please go back and have a look at that, and you'll see the diorama that this is going to go into at the end. But you will see it at the end of this video, so stay tuned. And yeah, if you want to know how I went about that, you can check out the video that's already on my YouTube. So just some oil wash after the camouflage is finished. I've not fixed that with clear coat again. I've just let the tank dry naturally. Actually, I've used a hairdryer. I didn't let it dry naturally, I just used a hairdryer. And then just carefully and gently doing some wash with burnt sienna and black. Yeah, I just plonk it on the model and then use the thinner to dilute it bit by bit. I think I've got that white piece of card in the background, so it's kind of overexposed there and it's underexposed the tank a little bit, but you can see I'm just, wearing the surface a little bit, dirtying the surface a little bit, picking out some of the details. Sometimes I'll dry brush then a lighter colour again over it, a little bit of a dust colour over it, just to pick out the bolts and the handles, but I didn't on this occasion. It's quite a busy surface, there's a lot going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed making it. Yeah, T34 seems to cry out for tank riders because it's got that large deck at the back. When I was looking to see if they did carry any storage or the spare road wheels that came with the pack, I read that the transmission was liable to break down occasionally. They had some problems with the transmission for the tank. So I saw several photographs where they had a spare gearbox, spare transmission system strapped to the engine deck. That seemed to be quite a frequent thing, that tanks would carry a spare for when it broke down. I'm pretty confident that you could get a resin, a T34 transmission off eBay or something, but it just seemed an unnecessary expense, that just for a funny little bit of historical accuracy. But no, the green that I picked and the sand and the chocolate brown, hopefully authentic, but in my mind, they look good together. The sand and the chocolate brown, they picked out a little bit. The green, they kind of made it seem a little bit brighter than it was. But yeah, I'm happy with it, and I enjoyed it as well. Once I'd got the road wheels on and the suspension on, so say that took a couple of hours. The rest of the model was a pleasure. Apart from the tracks, I just never enjoy those kind of tracks. But yeah, it just took me the best part of a week in between work. And yeah, there's loads of these T34s available, guys. 2 different versions mainly. Please put in the comments what your feelings are about the, Takom, Tamiyas, Zvezdas, Ryefields. What I did like about this one was it was a solid gun. It wasn't the 2 halves that Tamiya usually does. So no seam line to fill or sand. Yeah, that was really good. Why don't all models come with that? But I don't know. I've made a T34, but then I've made lots of tank destroyers that are based on the T34 chassis and body. So I feel like I've made this model several times, but this one was I suppose the nicest detailed and the nicest fit. Yeah, it was quality. It felt good. There's also a couple of pieces of the photo etch that weren't mentioned in the instructions at all. If anybody knows what they are, some short pieces that might have been small straps or handles, and then there was a kind of panel with 3 separate surfaces, but I couldn't see anywhere what that was intended to be, and so I left it out. So back to the diorama that I'd made in my last video. The camera angle is like behind the building, so you can't see the building that's at the top of it. But I smashed up one of my, I clipped one of my Hanomags. I took the fender off one side, took one of the wheels off, blew some of the armour off around the driver's compartment, and covered it in snow. But the road was very hard, it was plaster, and the T34 was struggling on its hard, rigid plastic tracks to kind of sit comfortably on it. It was kind of seesawing a little bit. So no problem, put some PVA glue, some grey emulsion paint, and some Vallejo chocolate brown, and some plaster, and made a wet mud consistency for the road, just so the T34 will sit more comfortably and the tracks will make contact with the surface. So it's only about 5mm thick. I used a little bit on the tracks, so there was consistency between the tank and the mud road. I haven't done yet, but I might do some still water effects on it on top of that. Yeah, I just kind of found a place where the tank was comfortable, and then kind of pressed it into the PVA plaster and paint. I like that colour. It's kind of like a grimy, dusty, winter road kind of colour. And I moved the Hanomag a little bit towards the building just to get it out of the way so the tank had clearance to get through. Usually I make the model first, then make the diorama, but this one the other way around. Sometimes I'm just in the mood to scratch build something, to put something together on a diorama, and sometimes I'm in the mood to do fiddly details on a tank. It just depends. I've not used any vegetation in this diorama, just because it's an inner city building. The building that's out of view now, but you'll see in a second. And the idea is it's Berlin. Berlin in the last winter of the war. Yeah, I'll give you a better look at the. Like I said at the beginning, slight dusting of snow on the tank, but I wanted the camouflage to be visible. And I've overlapped a little bit of snow dusting on the road, so it doesn't look plonked in, removed from what's around it. Like I say, some simple decals on this one, just a number. Guys, as usual, thanks very much for dropping by. Let me know what you think, and any comments welcome. Appreciate your views. Cheers, guys.